Today, Caleb's going to tell us all the secrets about whether to double or triple down on a strength in your business or fix a critical failure.
Every
So,
secret.
Caleb, which one in your mind is more important? You've got something good, and so I should really leverage that to the absolute max, or I'm great at chasing away customers and I need to fix that problem. Or is
Um,
that a false dichotomy?
well, in my mind, I think focusing on your strengths is important because you can outsource so much stuff now. So if you're bad at finance, go find someone to help you do finance. If you're bad at sales, go find someone to help you do sales. If I would say double down on your strengths because there's always a way to figure out how to limit your weaknesses. Whether that's outsourcing to a totally different firm, whether that's bringing in an employee or someone you know as like a partner to work with you. But there are definitely ways to limit those weaknesses. What was the context behind what made you think about that?
I started thinking about the limitations that are weaknesses, but aren't necessarily your weaknesses. And then it got me down the path of how bad does a weakness have to be before it's not where, like, or doubling down is crazy resource intense. Like you're already doing an excellent job at whatever it is, the thing that you're critically doing. Versus it'd be easier to just fix the like what's the crappy part of the business that's causing you to lose or not get customers. But I started originally thinking about that by thinking about housing and talking about making modular homes instead of kind of like a shipbuilding. Shipbuilding used to be kind of like this non-industrialized thing, and then um, partially due to the world wars, we figured out, oh, you can basically build this like an assembly line, like a car.
Yeah.
Make it modular, and then weld the pieces together at certain stages. And then I thought one weakness of that is, but it's not necessarily the manufacturer's weakness, is that it's so capital intensive, and such a lifestyle shift that you have to have. It's kind of like the fax machine. Like when one person owns the fax machine, it's useless. When two people own the fax machine, it's a little more helpful, especially for like law offices on the other side of the nation that work together. But the fax machine's still not useful until there's like, several hundred of them or
Yeah.
thousands of them. And modular homes are not popular now. And so it's one of those issues where you have to get enough adoption, or it has to be so dang cheap that you can really break through well, not only cheap, you got to break through people's price issues, you got to break through zoning issues, and you have to break through uh, the knowledge barrier. Like people there, you have to be out there enough that people actually interact with your brand. And one of the best ways to do that is, oh, I've got a friend that did this, and they'll tell me all about it. But that's not necessarily a self a weakness that you can control. I guess
Mm.
you can control a little bit of the media branding, getting your name out there. Um, and that would be versus like a weakness is you got to have a critical mass that'll keep that thing going. A strength would be it's easy, it's cheap, it's fast compared to modern housing. So do you double down on we can get you a house in 2 weeks? Are you versus 4 months? Or do you double down on we think we can make this cheaper? Or does it matter if as cheap as you can make it, should you be going out and doing more advertising because nobody's going to buy it? So that was kind of a scenario that I was thinking through in my head.
I think that would be the only weakness in which, yeah, you should stop and do something else. If you've tried market validation and no one wants to buy it, because that is not a weakness you can outsource. Anything like within business, if you're bad at managing money or bad at selling to people, you can outsource that stuff. But when your actual service, your product or service is bad in and of itself, and no one's going to buy it, you can't outsource more people buying it because that's the whole point is no one wants to buy it anyways. So, I mean, you can out like you can talk to third parties to figure out how to make your service or product better, but if the foundation of it isn't worth buying anyways, just move on to something different. I was actually reading or am reading a book called From Idea to Success. It's like, how do you take your original idea and actually start growing a company with it? And that was one of the big things is don't, which every single person wants to skip because it's boring, honestly, is market validation and trying to figure out whether people actually want to buy your product because you're going to either waste a lot of money doing a lot of sales on a product no one wants, or you're going to figure out that it's a really good product and you're just going to blow everything out of the water and start selling like crazy. But you're only going to know that if you do some market validation.
What were they considering to be good tips for market value? Like, what could I apply to the housing market in this scenario? Or was it more like consumer goods type stuff?
Um, it honestly was across the spectrum. One big thing that they talked about was find people who are comfortable enough to tell you when things are bad. Because if you get a bunch of yes men, then it's not really market validation. It's just people who are trying to be nice to you. So like make sure that you have the questions pre-selected that you want to ask and make sure that the people you are talking to aren't close enough to you that they would feel bad to tell you what's wrong, which I think is also a big mistake for most people. And even me, like talking to your friends and family, oh, I have this idea. What do you think? They're like, oh, that's cool. You're like, well, is there anything wrong with it? No, I think that'll be a good idea. It's like, that doesn't really help you at all. You actually need to know what's wrong with the idea so that you know what risks you're taking when pursuing the product or service. So that was definitely the biggest one because I think that's one of the most important is like figuring out what is going to go wrong with your product, not just thinking it's all roses because that's never how it is. So yeah, I would say that's the biggest
Mm-hmm.
piece of advice.
Yeah. I had an interesting experience related to the tax business that I can't remember if I mentioned it previously or not. A friend of mine who moved, he uh, has started going to a local tax service. Um, and I figured he was just doing it himself. So I kind of asked him, I can't remember how I worded it. I didn't want him to feel like I was offended that he was going elsewhere. But he mentioned this place had a nice user portal for uploading documents. And uh, it's super interesting being in this space because a lot of the perceived value is not on how accurately you file taxes, which is kind of mind blowing.
Yeah, it is
But
crazy.
because most of the time, like there's this minimum above which, uh, if you don't have any complexity above that, then there's not a whole lot of wrong ways you can file taxes or significantly wrong ways. And the perceived value of the service is based on delivery. How easily was your delivery handled? Getting stuff to the preparer or getting things back from the preparer. And it was just another reminder that like, oh yeah, clients really value the handoff is I mean, that's your touch point. Uh, and it really doesn't matter. Like as long as you're not something's not critically wrong with the taxes, that's what people perceive as being the like, oh, I was treated really, really well. And so this year, I'm trying to put in place a nice portal system, a more professional looking interaction. Not necessarily because I think it'll keep the clients that I have, but because if new clients come in and I'm charging them a lot more this year, then I want them to feel the value there.
Yeah.
But yeah, having somebody who's willing to give me feedback, and that one was sort of oblique. I don't know that he was going to offer any feedback until I asked. Uh, but I mean, I think he was wanting to find somebody closer that he could sit down with and have them do their taxes, which is a lot of people want that. Um,
Yeah.
so I don't know if that was the main reason, but it was interesting feedback.
Honestly, he probably wouldn't have even been able to give you that feedback until he saw something different.
Mm-hmm.
He wouldn't have even thought, you know, I want a portal for me to upload documents versus sending a Google Drive or whatever. But then when he saw it, he realized that he did like it, which is another hard part is people don't really, es- especially with new products, people don't really know what they're missing
Yeah.
until they see what they're missing.
Yep.
So it's hard for them to give you feedback, which is why it's important to carefully craft the kinds of validation and questions you're asking so that you can pull out the answers from them versus them having to
Mm-hmm.
try to think. I know I do this all the time when I'm like, oh, yeah, so what do you like about that? That is like the most general question you could ever ask. And people are going to be like, I thought it looked cool. And that's just not helpful at all.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah,
Yeah. At least if they've used more than one product of the same type, you can ask them, what do you hate about the other one, or why did you switch? And that gives you a little more detail. But yeah, if it's the only type of product like that they've ever used, then sometimes it's not supremely helpful.
yeah, that
Yeah, and
actually.
feedback. No, go ahead.
Well, with the software that I talked about previously, I've been having more conversations with people, and that's something I'm trying to get better at is figuring out specific ways to pull out different ideas and recommendations that people have to make the software better. And I know that people aren't necessarily comfortable with saying, yeah, this is not very good in certain areas. So trying to figure out how to get people to actually tell me what could be improved. It is also beta testing for it, so they
Mm-hmm.
know. And like when I showed you, like we knew it was going to be a little glitchy. There's just that's what happens during beta tests. But trying to get recommendations and stuff for new features that would actually be really helpful.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm working through that process right now, literally.
Yeah, yeah. The and yeah, humans are weird. Our inability to predict what it is that we will like is pretty profound, and not being able to pinpoint. We think we will like something, but until we experience it, not knowing, uh, is something. Who was oh, I think it was Rory Sutherland that was mentioning that you got to try a bunch of stuff because a lot of time the consumer doesn't even know what they want. They'll tell you something, but they've not experienced the vast majority of things with your product. And if you have a new idea, they may not know that they really like the experience or not. I think maybe he mentioned the iPhone being one of those things where people underestimated how much they would want a computer in their pocket until they had it. And then, of course, it was life altering. Uh, I want to say there was some other product that was very similar to that. But yeah, getting people to give feedback and be critical, and then also to know what they want while they're being critical. two major problems there.
Have you gotten any closer to finishing your portal for clients?
I have the website up. I also changed the, I don't necessarily care for the look of it, but I changed the contact portion of the web page because I didn't like it. And the feedback thing was really strange. So I put a Google Forms button with the form that I wanted. And yeah, I still have to test out one of the softwares that are made for workflowing a tax return and see if that will be the professional interaction that I want it to be or not. I started using it and I just haven't finished it yet, but I want to try running my tax return through it and see what happens.
Yeah,
But
you can plug your website. We'll put it in the description, by the way. So that will for all people, if anyone needs taxes done, Josh has got you.
there you
Uh,
go.
have for the company that you work at, I know originally the owner kind of started with just some friends and family doing some accounting. Have you tried to implement any, not necessarily market validation, because obviously the business is running right now, so I mean, it's validated enough to run a full business with like lots of employees. But have you found any way to find out who the specific target customer should be in the long term in order to, if you were to scale further, in order to do that, to scale?
Well, I mean, we have some inclinations in that we have current customers who tend to circle around different industries. They tend to be the customers that are making good money, don't complain about the bill, and are relatively easy to work with. That being said, we are getting a growing portfolio of a different type. So there's kind of two in my mind that we've just naturally run into. And those have been the ones that have generated the most work. That being said, I would say we haven't necessarily figured out a great way to directly market to those two niches. And that's something that I would like to develop further. Um, let's see, your question was, is there kind of an area that we are looking to niche down in? The general like construction contractor realm seems to be pretty profitable, at least if you know what you're doing. And those are the guys that have no interest doing clerical work. So they're usually the ones that are like, yep, whatever you think, which could be terrible if you had a terrible accountant or bookkeeper. But we're pretty good. And we don't pretty much, we do no advertising. And so everything we've gotten is generated, what do I mean? Just by word of mouth. And that seems to have worked pretty well. So yeah, we kind of have areas we would like to do more in, but how we get more people from those areas, I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah. I mean, I know you have thought about doing some small business workshops and stuff. I think that'd be a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Also, just to even poll your customers and ask them, how do they value your service? What's the biggest value that you bring to them? And then you can see who really values your service, who just is like, I mean, this is cool, but I could get it anywhere. And then who's like, I could do this myself. And
Mm-hmm.
then figuring out from that how to get more of the people who really value that service.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we've considered asking clients, hey, if you know anybody that you think it would be useful for them to use our service, mention us. But at the same time, I'm not a salesman. I hate suggesting that, like people feeling like I am pushing them to. sell their friends to me. Uh, I would much prefer for it to happen organically, but sometimes people need a reminder. So I'm on the fence
Yeah.
about that one.
I actually had to kind of do that last night. So I was at a basketball game because my wife coaches the elementary cheerleaders at or at a an elementary school near us, and her grandma and like her step grandpa, because her grandma's husband passed away, but he's one of the lay pastors of the church where they go. And I was talking to him a little bit about AI and whether the church has thought about AI or not, and if they have a policy in place and all this stuff. And he said no. So I was like, well, if you have a meeting with the pastor anytime soon, you could, I mean, I could help you guys out. You know, you could mention if he would be open to that opportunity. So I've had to learn a little bit more about how to sell myself, because if I don't, then nothing's going to happen.
Yeah.
But it is kind of weird, you know, trying to sell yourself when you're not really used to it. But hopefully that'll get better, I guess.
I, yeah. It just feels a little skeezy, but if you do really have a good product, then it's a little easier because you can come from the angle of like, well, I really think this would help you, and I really would like to help you, and in the meantime, I'll get paid to do it. But it still has a weird veneer on it. That's fine.
Yeah.
It's part of the sales. If you have a good product and you think it's really going to help the person, I would say the version that is not cool is when you really don't have a product that's any different than anybody else's, and you're pushing really hard to get clients. Sometimes feels a little like, mm, mm, are you interested in the client's well-being, or are you just out to make a buck?
Yeah. No, that makes sense. You got anything else?
Nope, that's it for me.
That's it for me too. Uh, I guess just figure out, honestly, it might be a good idea to do a strengths and weaknesses assessment, figure out whether or not you can, your product is your weakness. And if not, then double down on your strengths and outsource your weaknesses and see how it goes. But yeah, so that's it for today's podcast. Like and subscribe on YouTube. Give us a 5-star review on Spotify if you like the episode, and we'd love to receive an email, jc.unscripted@gmail.com. That's the podcast.